standing at 10 foot tall and with the strength to break your back with a hug. The owlbear is one of the most favorite monsters in the Dungeons & Dragons universe. I'm Adam from The Army Painter, and today, in honor of Halloween, I'm going to show you how to paint a spooky owlbear using the Nolzur's Marvelous Pigments range of paints, the official line of paints for Dungeons & Dragons. You can find the paints that you'll need for this tutorial from our color primer range, our war paints range, and of course the Nolzur's Marvelous Pigments line of paints. Spooky may be a little bit of a misnomer, but what I'm trying to achieve here is a dark and creepy owlbear figure in this tutorial. I began by priming the model black, very simply using color primer matte black. Now I'm going to be using an airbrush for parts of this tutorial. If you don't have an airbrush, that's okay. You can easily achieve similar results with traditional painting techniques, but I felt this was a good opportunity to showcase how well the Nolzur's range of paints work through an airbrush. I began by spraying Underdark Gray over the raised areas of the model, like the owlbear's back and the edges of his wings. We're just trying to bring out the areas that the moonlight might hit this scary monster while he's roaming around the forest at night. We'll apply a simple highlight of a bit of orc skin on the most raised edges of the model. And then we're going to use this color to base in the areas that we will be painting in lighter colors in later steps, like the feathers here, and around the eyes and his chest. Using lawful white through the airbrush, we will reinforce the areas around the eyes and the chest. Then we'll be applying a thin coat of Ancient Mummy, a nice light, almost mottled yellow hue to the chest area of our owlbear. Using a traditional bristle brush, we'll be applying a thin coat of Sturge Tan from the D&D Underdark paint set to the area around the eyes and inside of the owlbear's mouth. We'll also use this to base coat the owlbear's beak and the fleshy areas around the owlbear's feet and hands, claws maybe, claw hands, that's it, claw hands. Moving on to Minotaur hide, we're going to use this to paint in owlbear's beak. Remember to thin down your paints and apply in 2 thin coats if necessary so as not to obscure any of the details on the model. Next, you're going to want to apply a thin coat of lawful white to the solids of the owlbear's eyes. Careful not to get this onto the Sturge Tan that we previously painted in the previous step. Once that's dried, we'll block in the big black pupil using Abyssal Black. Before we move on to the next stage in this tutorial, we're going to go back to some of the base tones like Abyssal Black and Underdark Gray to reestablish those areas that were painted over in the airbrushing step. This will really begin to add some definition to the sculpt. Washes are specifically designed to be painted over the entirety of the model, and when you do, as opposed to the pigment sitting on top of the surface of the model, the pigments will run its way into the recesses, adding realistic depth and contrast to your model. The first wash we will be applying is Flesh Wash. We're going to apply this all over the fleshy parts of the hands, the feet, as well as the beak, and a more focused application around the owlbear's eyes. We'll just thin this down with a bit of water and add a very light application across the dingy yellow feathers on our owlbear's chest. Now we'll grab some Shadow Wash and apply this all over the black and gray areas on the model. Careful not to apply this over any of the areas we've already washed with Flesh Wash. Then we'll apply a thin application of this carefully over the white feathers around the eyes. Give the wash some time to dry, and when it has, grab your favorite dry brush, and it's time to begin highlighting the feathers on the model with Underdark Gray. Simply load up your brush with paint and then flick off any of the excess. You want to have as little paint as possible remaining in the bristles of the brush. Then gently flick the edges of the bristles across the raised areas of the feathers like so, and apply a gentle highlight using the dry brushing method. Then using orc skin, we'll apply a more focused dry brush on the most raised areas of the model, as well as to the stones of his base. We'll repeat this step, this time with Ancient Mummy on the chest. And then we'll do the same with Lawful White around the eyes, careful not to get any of the white paint on the beak or the eyes of the model. If you're happy with the highlights that you achieved in this dry brush stage, you can stop right here and move on to the later parts of the tutorial. But if you'd like to take it just one step further, follow along. I especially recommend applying a more focused highlight to the areas that will draw the most attention from your fellow dungeon partiers, like the feathers around the eyes and the horns of the owlbear, as well as the feathers around the hands and the big feathers on his wings. We'll use Underdark Gray and Orc Skin to also highlight the claws on the model. We'll apply another focused highlight of Ancient Mummy to the chest, just very quickly picking out the edges of those feathers. We'll repeat this step with Lawful White around the feathers on our owlbear's face, and if you'd like, you can apply some of the Lawful White to the chest feathers too, like so. With the feathers now complete, we'll add an initial highlight to all of the fleshy bits with Sturge Tan, like here on the hands, and very carefully around the eyes. To finish these fleshy areas, we'll apply a final highlight of Flump Pink, just to the most raised areas on the model. Now it's time to go back to the beak. We will reapply a rough highlight using Minotaur Hide, being sure to leave the wash in the recesses. Then a simple final highlight of Rust Monster to the top of the ridge and edges of the beak will really make this monstrous beak stand out. We'll give the model a once-over to make sure that we didn't miss anything, and then we'll move on to applying a coat of Anti-Shine Matte Varnish. Now you can apply this with a brush or a spray. I'm using a brush at this stage, and this will protect your model and all of the hard work that you've done and really seal in that paint. And once that's dry, using Warpaint's Gloss Varnish, we'll apply a coat of this to the owlbear's eyes, tongue, and the tips of his claws to really give our half-bear, half-owl, cave-dwelling monster a sinister look. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed painting this spooky owlbear model, and I hope that you learned a few tips along the way. You can find all of the paints that we used in this tutorial at your friendly local game store, from your favorite online retailers such as Amazon, or direct from us at www.thearmypainter.com. Now remember, the magic in miniature painting is that it can be as simple or as challenging as you'd like it to be, but with a few simple techniques, you're sure to achieve some great results. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time, and happy Halloween.